Hi, I'm Marla. 2 weeks before my wedding, my family threw an engagement dinner. My name was on the invitation, but not at the table. I sat near the trash can while my sister sat next to my fiancé. No one said it out loud, but I wasn't the bride in that room. How many times do you have to be excluded before you stop making excuses for them? Tell me, have you ever felt like a guest in your own life? The dining room smelled like rosemary and resignation. 12 chairs circled the long oak table. Candles flickered. Crystal glasses chimed against perfectly folded napkins. It was the kind of gathering that looked good in pictures. And maybe that was the point. When I walked in, I saw her first. Delaney. Already seated, already glowing. She wore a champagne silk blouse that caught the light, and her smile like she belonged in a magazine spread called Effortless. She sat between my mother and father, of course, and directly across from Soren. Our guests chatted around her as if she were the bride-to-be, the woman of the hour. The only chair left was at the far end, close to the swinging kitchen door, near the trash bin, and behind a pillar that blocked the fireplace. I hesitated, standing long enough to be noticed, but not long enough to protest. I sat, where they told me to. My mother raised her glass before dessert. "To the couple," she said with a practiced sparkle in her voice. But her eyes never found mine. They locked onto Delaney and Soren, as if this dinner belonged to them, as if they were the story. I smiled when I was supposed to, chewed when prompted, laughed once, softly to fill space. My name wasn't said, not even once, just our sweet girl, or the younger one, or quiet as always. Afterward, as people lingered in the foyer with coats and compliments, my cousin Janine pulled me aside near the staircase. "Hey," she said gently, "was your name supposed to be printed like that?" "Like what?" I asked. She pulled a folded invitation from her purse, the one we'd mailed out weeks earlier. My name, smaller, misaligned, tucked underneath our parents' names like an afterthought. "Oh," I said, "must have been a formatting thing." I folded the card and slid it into my bag without looking again. Back in the car, I remembered high school award night, my name forgotten during the announcement, the way Delaney whispered, "Maybe next year," like it was helpful, like it didn't burn. Some things don't change, they just dress up nicer. We got home, and I went straight to the laundry room, sat on the floor with my heels off and my hands in my lap. Soren found me there, still wearing his tie, still warm from the praise of my family. "You okay?" he asked, kneeling next to me. "Of course," I said, too fast. He kissed my temple. I nodded toward the living room where Delaney's laugh echoed off the walls. She was pouring herself another glass of wine and settling into the armchair Soren had just vacated, the seat still warm from his presence. And that was the moment I understood. This wasn't about where I sat. It was about where she still believed she belonged. The box was lighter than I expected. It sat on the porch like a package no one wanted to claim. Corners bent, one side split just enough to show a glint of ivory fabric. For a moment, I wondered if it had been delivered to the wrong house. But my name was there, spelled correctly for once. I carried it inside, set it on the living room floor, and waited. Not for anyone to join me, no one would, but for the quiet to feel soft enough to open something sacred. The ribbon slipped off easily. The lid gave way like it was relieved. I pulled the dress from its tissue cradle gently, like I was lifting a secret. It was perfect until it wasn't. Near the hem, just left of center, a single clean slice ran through 3 layers of fabric. Not frayed, not torn, not caught on anything. It was deliberate. My breath didn't catch. It just stopped for a second. Then resumed like it knew there was no point wasting time on shock. I sat down on the floor, laid the dress across my lap, and traced the cut with my fingertip. It wasn't a tear. It wasn't an accident. It was a decision. I didn't scream. I didn't call the store, or Soren, or my mother. I just got my sewing kit, threaded a needle, and stitched it closed with hands steadier than they should have been. I matched the thread by memory. I learned that from her. The next day, I stopped by the boutique to ask if they had another sash, just in case. The woman behind the counter smiled, then leaned in with a whisper. "Someone came in asking if we could remake your dress. said the bride had changed her mind. I tilted my head. Do you remember the name? She checked the log, then said it. Delaney Cross. I nodded. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice was clear. Thanks, I said. That's helpful. On the way home, I kept thinking about the science fair in 7th grade. I'd spent 3 weeks building a model of the solar system from scratch. Delaney knocked it over the night before the competition. My mother said it was just a sister's clumsy moment. I redid the whole thing from memory. I didn't win. This dress was no different, just more expensive. When I got home, I put the dress on alone. No champagne, no music, no one to zip the back or adjust the sleeves. Just me and the seam that wasn't supposed to be there. I stood in front of the mirror, tilted the hem just so, and watched the fabric fall like nothing had happened. But something had. I smiled, not because I felt beautiful, but because I had covered the damage. Then I tilted my head and studied the reflection a little longer, and I wondered how long it would take her to try it on herself. The first buzz didn't wake me, the second one did. It was 2:13 in the morning, and the glow of Soren's phone lit up the wall behind us like a warning flare. He reached for it quickly, too quickly, and turned the screen away from me. I only saw the first letter, D. Then his voice, barely a breath. It's nothing. I'll be right back. He slipped out of bed like guilt had a shape and a weight. I stayed still, eyes open now, pulse steady. The walls in this house had always been thin, especially when it came to secrets. I listened from the edge of the mattress, trying not to move, trying not to guess too loudly. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear, soft, familiar, threaded with something that didn't belong to me. When he came back, he looked different, not guilty, just hesitant. He crawled in beside me, exhaled. She had a bad dream, he said. It freaked her out. I didn't ask who. I didn't have to. I nodded, turned onto my side, closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. The next morning, while Soren brewed coffee like nothing had happened, I opened my laptop and checked my inbox. Nothing. Then, on a whim, I checked the spam folder. One message, no sender, subject line, you're not the first. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. The message was short, vague, but it hit like a brick through stained glass. 3 years ago, another engagement, another sister, another version of this story. She doesn't stop, the message read. She doesn't lose. She just moves on to the next man who looks safe. There was no name, no closing, just those words and a timestamp. I didn't forward it. I didn't reply. I printed it, folded it once, and tucked it into the back of my notebook, the one with swatches and guest list drafts and catering quotes, like it belonged there. That afternoon, we went out for brunch. Soren was talking about chairs, how many to rent, who should sit where. I nodded along, smiled in the right places, but my ears were full of static. I was watching him now, not because I didn't trust him, but because I was beginning to expect not to. I hated that. I hated that my brain now had a separate channel reserved for doubt, and it was playing on a loop. That night he left his phone on the nightstand. Unlocked. I didn't mean to look, but I did. One message, unread. Last night felt safe. Thank you for that. No name, no context, just that, and a timestamp, 2:14 a.m. I closed my eyes and rolled over, facing the window. Trust doesn't die in a scream. It dies in a whisper. It was just supposed to be a quick visit. Final logistics, final seating plan, final nods of approval from people who hadn't asked a single question about what I actually wanted. Soren stayed behind at the Airbnb. We'd both agreed we needed to limit his exposure after the 2:13 incident. I walked in through the side door. Familiar smells greeted me. Lemon cleaner, cinnamon from the tin of cookies no one ever ate, and the faintest hint of old wood in colder years. And then I saw it, framed above the fireplace like it had always been there. A large print from our engagement brunch. My mother, my sister, and Soren, laughing. The light caught Delaney's hair perfectly. Carolyn was mid-laugh. Soren half-turned toward Delaney. The candid kind of beautiful, except I wasn't in it. I knew exactly where I'd been standing when that photo was taken. Off to the right, holding a tray of mimosas no one had helped me carry. I was cropped out, not missed. I turned to my mother. Nice photo. She glanced up from the pile of envelopes she was sealing. Oh yes, isn't it charming? It just looked better this way, more balanced. More balanced. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why my name was on every bill but not in the frame. I didn't tell her the image felt more like a warning than a memory. I just took it down, quietly. Walked it into the hallway and placed it face down on the side table next to the dusty family Bible. That night, I saw the same image again. But worse. Delaney had posted it on Instagram, cropped even tighter. Only her and Soren. He looked distracted, not smiling. She looked radiant. The caption read, "With the only man who ever really listens. #grateful #real owns." The comments came quickly. You two are so cute. Wait, did something change? OMG, perfect match. She tagged Soren, not me. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then lit up again with a new like. It wasn't new. It was familiar. This wasn't about attention. It was about erasure. I thought back to my 6th grade recital. Delaney had lost her voice that week. I'd practiced the duet solo and nailed it. But afterward, every teacher and parent talked about how brave she'd been to show up anyway. No one remembered the girl who sang, just the one who didn't quit the stage. I became good at being quiet. But this was different. Being forgotten was survivable. Being rewritten wasn't. I opened the post again, hovered over the comment section, typed and deleted 5 different lines. Nothing felt right. Nothing felt sharp enough or soft enough. Instead, I saved the photo to my phone, opened my message thread with Travis. I sent the image with one line. Save this. I have a feeling we're going to need it. The box was wrapped in gold paper, neat corners, crisp folds, a velvet ribbon tied like it had meaning. There was no card, but the handwriting on the tag gave her away. Delaney had always looped her lowercase y's like she wanted them to last longer than the words they ended. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the entry table, next to the shoes I hadn't worn since the brunch. Soren glanced at it and said nothing. We were learning how to read each other in silence. Later that night, after dishes were stacked and my inbox sat unanswered, I untied the ribbon. The paper came off too easily. Inside, a wooden box. Inside that, a frame. The quote was printed in calligraphy, centered perfectly. Marriage is tough. Tougher if you're fragile. I read it once, then again. I didn't get angry. I didn't ask Soren what he thought. I turned it face down on the counter and walked to the back room, where the sewing kit still sat from fixing the dress. I didn't even turn on the light. She didn't need to be in the room to insult me. She sent her voice instead, neatly folded, glass-fronted. The next morning, another box arrived, addressed to Soren. He opened it while I made coffee. He didn't look surprised, just tired. Inside was a tie, the same color, the same weave, the same packaging as the one I had given him a week earlier. There was a note. Hope you feel seen. Some people never really look. Soren didn't say anything, just crumpled the note, placed the tie back in the box and walked it out to the trash. I stared at the cup of coffee in my hand until the heat numbed my fingers. Then the phone rang. It was my mother. She was confirming catering, but it felt scripted, like she was reading from a list she didn't believe in. Then, as if she'd waited until I couldn't hang up politely, she said, "You know your sister's been struggling. Maybe just let her feel important this week." I was quiet. "You have so much already," she added. "You're strong. She's not. Be gracious." "I thought this week was about me," I said finally. "You're right," she said, which never meant I was. The call ended, and I sat down in front of my planner. I scrolled through floral samples, catering updates, makeup trial bookings. Then I started deleting them. The dress fitting? Gone. The flower trial? Gone. The boutique call? Postponed. I made one new entry. Find quiet, make it count. That evening I texted Travis. Keep anything she sends or says. I'm starting to see a pattern. He responded within 2 minutes. Already doing that. Then I turned off my phone, pulled the curtain shut, lit a candle. Let the silence sit beside me like a familiar shape. If I was going to be the villain in their story, I might as well write my own ending. It was 2:11 again. Same blue glow, same name, same silence growing like mold in the corners of my bedroom. But this time, I didn't wait for him to reach it. I reached first. "Soren?" she whispered on the other end. "No," I said, calm as breath. "Try again." Silence. No scrambling, no apology, just a quiet click. That was the first time I didn't let her finish a sentence. He was still half asleep when I slid the phone back on the nightstand, still unaware that something irreversible had just shifted. The next morning, I didn't wait for coffee to brew. I didn't wait for him to ask. "We're not doing this anymore," I said, not pretending it's harmless, not pretending it's nothing. I showed him the note from the tie box. I handed him the double gift she sent. I opened my planner and unfolded the printed email from the anonymous sender. He took each piece like evidence in a trial he hadn't known he was part of. He didn't defend her. "I knew something was wrong," he said. "She touches too long, stares too directly. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to hurt you." "Too late," I said, not cruelly, just honestly. He swallowed hard, then added, "I placed a camera in the guest room last week. Small, discreet, just in case." That landed like both betrayal and balm. Not because he spied, but because he believed me enough to prepare for what he didn't want to see. I didn't thank him. I didn't need to. Instead, I went into the sunroom, opened my planner, and flipped to the wedding prep page. There, next to final rehearsal timing, I crossed out the word hope. I wrote evidence instead. Then I rewrote the list from scratch, not of things to do, but of lines I wouldn't let anyone cross anymore. I deleted the wedding playlist that night, the one with the soft acoustic covers and instrumental piano pieces. I created a new one, called it Backup Plan. The first track was Silence. Just before I turned off my phone, a message came in from Travis. "Got the files. Just say the word." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Soon." Then I lit a single candle, curled into the corner of the couch, and let the quiet grow around me like armor. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one. But it'd be mine this time. The house was dressed in white and still. Bouquets lined the stairs. Chairs stood straight and silent in the backyard. My dress hung on the closet door, untouched. I sat in the makeup chair near the window, letting someone else decide how much shimmer should go on my eyelids. I didn't ask for updates. I didn't ask where Delaney was. I didn't have to. Something in the quiet told me this wouldn't end in peace. Upstairs, Travis stood by Soren's side, calm, steady, like the best man he hadn't officially been asked to be. The footage had been ready for hours, compressed, time-stamped, backed up on 2 separate drives. We waited. It started the night before, Delaney showing up to Soren's guest suite with a tumbler in hand, no lid, no explanation. She'd laughed, leaned against the doorway like she lived there. "Just one sip," she said, "to calm the nerves." Soren said no. She insisted. He gave in, 1 sip, maybe 2, enough. Within minutes he felt it. The dizziness. The soft spinning of the room that wasn't due to nerves or champagne. He excused himself, locked the bathroom door, sent Travis a single text. "Come now." Travis came, quietly. He hit record before he even opened the door. Delaney was already halfway to undressing, already on the bed, already whispering things the walls had no business hearing. Then Soren shouted, and Delaney turned, frozen, not afraid, just calculating. Now, back in real time, Travis handed the tablet to Walter. My father's face didn't move. He watched every second. Carolyn hovered behind him, pale and trembling. "This could ruin the family?" she whispered. "Please don't show this." Walter's eyes didn't blink. "Play it again," he said. I didn't cry. I didn't look away. I just stood and walked downstairs. Delaney arrived 10 minutes later, hair curled, lipstick smudged, dress too tight and eyes too wide. She scanned the room like she'd missed a cue. Then she saw our faces. She tried to laugh. Failed. "You think that video proves something?" she said, voice too loud, too shaky. Her eyes met mine, and that old glint flared again. He wanted me, not her. Gasps rose like steam. My hand didn't shake as I picked up the tablet from the corner table. I tapped play. The room went silent. Her voice filled the air, slow and unmistakable. Soren stood beside me, unmoving. Travis stepped forward, holding out a small silver USB like it was a weapon. It's archived. Walter looked at Carolyn. You still think this is about her being fragile? Carolyn didn't answer. Delaney opened her mouth, but I beat her to it. We're not the same, I said, voice steady. You never wanted love. You wanted an audience. The room didn't exhale when she left. Delaney was walked out quietly, not a scream, not a fight, just the subtle shuffle of heels over hardwood, the click of a door that didn't echo, but the air stayed thick, like the silence was still absorbing what we had finally allowed to be said. Some guests left. Others hovered, pretending to finish drinks that had long since warmed past pleasant. Walter sat in the corner armchair, hands clasped, back straight, still, unmoving. Carolyn stood a few feet behind him, one hand on the back of his chair, the other wrapped around her own wrist. Her eyes never left the floor, but they glistened as if someone had poured something too heavy into them. There were no defenses left to make, just the noise of nothing where love used to live. I waited until the house dimmed to talk to my father. We sat in the kitchen, where the lights had been left on. He was staring at a mug of untouched coffee. It had gone cold hours ago. She's not well, he said finally, but that's no longer an excuse. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He looked up. His voice was quiet, level. I let it go too far. I thought keeping the peace meant keeping quiet. I was wrong. I nodded, once. Then he said it, without pause, without hesitation. She's no longer welcome in this house. I didn't cry, but something loosened. A knot that had been sitting under my ribs for years. It didn't dissolve, it just stopped pulling. That night, I got the call I knew was coming. My mother's voice was soft, softer than I'd ever heard it, like she thought a gentler tone might undo the weight of her actions. I'm sorry it got this far, she said. I never imagined it would end like this. I waited. Then came the sentence that rewrote the apology. But she's still your sister, Marla. Blood doesn't disappear. I looked out the window at the porch light flickering against the snow. Then I said evenly, I'm not asking her to disappear. I'm just not letting her ride over me anymore. Mom didn't reply. She hung up a few seconds later. I don't think she realized she had nothing left to say. Later, I found myself digging through an old file box looking for the guest list draft. I remembered Thanksgiving, maybe 6 years ago. Delaney had accidentally pushed my plate onto the floor, splattering gravy and stuffing across the tiles. She laughed, said it slipped. Mom had told me not to be dramatic. Dad had looked at the wall. I opened my laptop, deleted the guest list file, the one with color-coded categories and rows of relatives who hadn't bothered to ask how I was since the engagement. I opened a new document. No color codes, no categories, just names. Only those who had shown up. For me. Even in small ways. I clicked order on the print screen and whispered not for anyone else but myself. The list just got lighter, so did I. I woke up to stillness. No bridesmaids whispering in the hallway. No playlist humming through the floor. No smell of curling irons or perfume thickening the air. Just coffee, quietly placed on the nightstand by Soren, who didn't ask how I slept. He knew. He sat at the edge of the bed, sipping his own. The silence between us less awkward and more earned. The wedding had happened. That much was true. But none of it had looked the way I'd pictured. And still, I wasn't sorry. Delaney was gone. Carolyn hadn't called. The house no longer held echoes. It just held absence. Later that morning, I slipped on an old sweatshirt and walked around the neighborhood. The same one I'd ridden my bike through as a kid. The same cracked sidewalk in front of the elementary school, the same faded mural near the corner grocery store. I passed the schoolyard and remembered scraping my knee during recess. I was 10. Delaney told everyone I'd fallen chasing boys. She'd laughed. Everyone else had too. I hadn't corrected them. Back then, I thought keeping quiet was how you kept things from getting worse. Turns out, silence just teaches people they were right. When I got home, Soren had laid out 2 photo stacks on the table, one from the reception, the other from the wedding itself. We keep what looks like truth, he said, handing me the smaller pile. There were new faces in those photos, people I hadn't expected to stand so tall beside me. Chosen family, not inherited. I deleted the old guest list file from my laptop, the one my mother had reviewed 3 times. Opened a new one. Fewer names, better ones. We invite people who clap, I said, more to myself than him. Not compete. That afternoon, I checked my phone. One message, from her. You know I love you both. You didn't have to make it this dramatic. I typed a reply, then erased it. I opened my journal instead. Wrote, some people call silence cruel. I call it space to heal. That evening, we packed light. A weekend away, no plans, no posts. I left my dress hanging on the back of the closet door, not because I needed to forget, but because I didn't. Before we pulled out of the driveway, I walked across the lawn to the front steps of my parents' house, slid an envelope into the mailbox. Inside was a photo from the wedding. Just me, laughing, alone. On the back, I'd written, I finally chose myself. Maybe forgiveness doesn't need a reunion. Maybe peace doesn't mean we sit at the same table again. Sometimes choosing peace means walking away from the table, even when it's set for you. I used to think silence was weakness, that staying quiet meant I was the better person. But I've learned that boundaries speak louder than politeness, and walking away isn't quitting, it's protecting. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. You're allowed to choose yourself, even if it disappoints others. Family doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity. Love doesn't require you to stay in rooms where your name is forgotten or misused. And now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you thought you owed loyalty to? What did that moment teach you? If this story touched you, comment 1 or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't connect with it, I'd still love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done differently? Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories like this one. There's more to tell. And maybe next time it'll sound a little like your story too.